Welcome to The Outlet, an NBA podcast hosted by Nick Fay and Kory Waldron.
On this episode of The Outlet, Kory and I recap Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals. As always, you can catch The Outlet on all streaming platforms. Enjoy the show. All right, Kory, Game 5 wrapped up. The Celtics have some life. They've pulled up the win, 121-108. Now series is looking 3-2. What are you thinking about this one after Boston had that nice comeback in the third quarter?
We're going to see at least one Game 6, right? So
Yeah.
now that's officially decided in the conference finals. It was a tale of two halves for the Celtics. The first half, once again, Jason Tatum wasn't to be found. There was no J in front of his name.
And he was just like out of it, like in terms of his whole vibe. It wasn't even just a shooting.
Yeah, he looked off, and then I thought there was a little bit too much Marcus Smart again in the first half. It kind of felt like
said that a couple times this series, right?
Yeah, Duncan Robinson, I thought on the other side was really good, right? I mean, it felt like Miami was in complete control. Again, another hot start for them. Then, like you mentioned, the third quarter came, and the Celtics looked good. I mean, the second half was Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. And that's what we've been saying on these recaps, throughout this entire series so far is there's got to be Tatum and Jaylen Brown following. Now, of course, Tatum was off to a slow start again, but he picked it up in the second half, and Jaylen Brown was the great number two alongside of him, and that was really what carried the way. And then Kemba, I thought, was pretty good throughout this game. Nothing flashy, but another solid performance by Kemba.
Yeah, Kemba in foul trouble, but you really wanted to see Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown take over. They did that in that third quarter. Both guys took over 20 shots. We're looking at Jaylen Brown, 28 points, 12 of 23, 4 of 10 from 3. Jason Tatum, 31, 8 of 22 from the field, 3 of 10, but 14 free throw attempts again. Jason Tatum, at points, he is just so smooth with his scoring. It just doesn't feel like as soon as he hits one shot, you feel like he's not going to miss the next 5. So it's just like Boston gave you that vibe in the third quarter. And it's like, this is why we picked them to win this series. And that's how you felt in the fourth quarter, too. And offensively, we talked a lot about how they stepped up. But defensively, they started smothering Miami. And you're like, wow, Boston really does have all these plus defenders. And they could essentially eliminate Miami this type of way, especially because I thought Bam looked a little banged up tonight. Didn't give the same aggressive and positive vibes that we've seen in the past. In the series. I think that left hand / wrist is kind of messing with him.
Yeah, he didn't look 100%. And then, obviously, Duncan Robinson completely cooled off. Tyler Herro, who was huge last game, wasn't really a factor in this game. And you look at where the Celtics dominated, it was rebounding.
Yeah.
They're destroyed offensively, 13-6 in the offensive rebounds, 50 rebounds for the game. There's 38 by Miami. Daniel Tice with a nice double-double. And then you got to give a shout out, but Enes Kanter, and again, that was it 8 minutes, 9 minutes, 10 minutes. He was also solid once again, grabbing rebounds, scoring a little bit in the post. This was great production, like you said. I think Bam not being 100% definitely adds into that. But the Celtics we've been talking about, they don't have much talent, right? Bam is a clear-cut win normally when you're looking at the plus-minus between both teams, and the Celtics were able to win that category. That's crucial for them.
100%. And you're right. Shout out Enes Kanter. 10 minutes, 8 points, 4 of 7. And not only did he actually get some buckets, he forced Miami to stop switching, what led to Kemba getting some open threes. So he really had a positive impact. And then that, put a cherry on top. It felt like that motivated Daniel Tice in the second half, because I felt like in the first half, Tice was kind of trash. Like, I was like, wow, this is the weakness for Boston. This is what's hurt them, and this is what's going to prevent them from getting a championship. And then all of a sudden, he came out in the second half, looked like a different player. So a lot of props to him. And Kemba, you appreciate the effort. Not necessarily an amazing game. The foul trouble hurts, but he had his moments where he hit those big shots, and he was just a factor. And he kind of almost stepped back and allowed Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum to be the guys.
100%. And that's sometimes what a leader needs to do, right?
Yeah.
Realize that it's not his night. So I thought that was crucial too. And like Hayward was probably, wasn't a great Hayward game. Definitely was in the back burner. Didn't look as aggressive, but they didn't need him to be anything more than what he was tonight.
Second half, I felt like he was a little bit better. I think Brad Stevens, I want to say, kind of encouraged him to take some more shots or called for him to do it, because in the first half, he wasn't even looking at the hoop. It was just like, okay, like you're out there, you're not necessarily going to light it up, but they need you to be that offensive threat. And it felt like he really didn't want to shoot. But going to the Miami side, one area that stuck out right off the bat is the three-point shooting. They shot under 20%, 19% from the three-point line, 7 of 36. And we're not talking about a ton of contested looks. We're talking about a lot of open looks, especially in that first half. I felt like they missed so many open threes, and it was like, okay, this is going to come back to bite them, especially in the second half when Boston turned up that defense.
I mean, all their three-pointers are basically between Harrow and Robinson. Obviously, Dragic dropped one, and so did Kelly Olynyk. But, of course, Duncan Robinson's threes all came in the first quarter. So then there's no production from three-point after. You get 4 three-pointers outside of Duncan Robinson. That's dreadful. I mean, Jay Crowder, right? We gave him so much praise in the first half of this series, and he looks like Jay Crowder from every other destination we've ever seen Jay Crowder again. I don't know what the answer is. And Dragic also hasn't looked as good shooting-wise the first half. And this is not, like, uncommon. In the playoffs, the three-point percentage numbers generally drop down farther than what they were. Obviously, Miami was the best three-point percentage team, I think, during the regular season, or the second best. And it's normal for those numbers to drop, but these are drastic drops the last couple of games.
Yeah, the Jay Crowder stuff really is having an impact from even the Pacers series to the Milwaukee series. He was shooting really well, even shot well in the first couple games, but him not being able to shoot threes and then having Jimmy Butler out there and then bam, it's so easy to kind of limit, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, or Goran Dragic. They really need him to start hitting some threes. I will give him credit, though. I felt like he had a ton of great cuts in this game and at least still found a way to have some type of offensive impact. But Jimmy Butler, let's talk about him, because 17 points, 5-11 from the field, 7 of 8 from the free throw line. Not enough from Jimmy Butler. Like a closeout game, like he needs to, I think, be more aggressive.
It just felt like another game, and I hate to say this, but like it felt like he was just going through the motions. It didn't feel like anything special from Butler. It just felt like, he obviously, we know the role that he is with this Miami team. It's pretty much to be a pass first wing, look for other guys, and then get himself going by attacking the hoop. But like you said, in a closeout game, you want to see him more aggressive. Whether he's taking jump shots is not the point. Get to the line a little bit more. Try and attack the basket more. Because, again, it was a good game by Jimmy Butler, but you needed him to be better than just a good player tonight because, again, there wasn't a Tyler Hero performance out there. There wasn't anyone else coming to provide that kind of spark and that kind of offense. And that's when you need Jimmy Butler to say, okay, read the room like I'm the star. Yeah. This is my moment. And there wasn't enough of that. And I feel like he tried to get that going a little bit too late. He drove and had a turnover late in the game, driving to the paint. And at that point, it was already a 15, 17-point game.
Yeah, I feel like you need to have that mindset earlier in the game and that mentality from the start. And I thought at certain points in the first half, okay, Butler's going to take over this one. And not only the fact that Tyler Hero or Dragic didn't step up, you have Boston on the other side. You have Jaylen Brown. You have Jason Tatum. One of those guys is probably going to pop off. You need someone on your team to be that guy. And really, Tyler Hero, that was great to see him drop 37 in the last game. Right. Probably not going to happen again. He's a rookie. Maybe he'll get 20. But, like, Jimmy Butler might be the only guy right now on this roster going into Game 6 that you can anticipate someone dropping 30 points.
Yeah, no, 100%. Especially when you look at Dragic would probably be the second closest guy. As a vet, you would trust him to get something going. But, Duncan Robinson has really been limited for the majority of this series. And it feels like when he does have a decent game, it's a first quarter explosion and then not a lot else after that. They need to get some more 3-point shooting, as we mentioned, 6 of, only hitting 7 tonight. That's not good enough to win, especially with a team like Miami, which doesn't have like a go-to scorer who can create a shot off the dribble. They need to create offense for each other from the 3-point line. And if you're not going to hit the 3, this is when Miami can kind of get in a tough spot when you look at so much star talent on that Boston Celtics team.
Yeah, I mean, if they go into a shooting slump right now, it could really be a Boston type of comeback. I think that'd be something I'd be nervous about as a Heat fan. You expect them to bounce back, but 7 of 36 is really rough. And the zone tonight was 0% effective. Boston had no issue at all. And I almost felt like the zone didn't work the first 2 plays. I almost just would have went straight back to man because it felt like Boston was so prepared for it today that it's like, all right, we saw this for 4 games. We know we heard about it over the last 48 hours in terms of the media. We're going to crush that when we see it, and they did that.
100%. It almost felt, like you said, it felt like it would have been one of those nights where like they attacked the zone so quickly and so easily to start off the bat. You might be like, all right, this might not work tonight. Yeah. Like you said, the Celtics had no issue no matter who was thrown at them defensively.
Just a lot of better ball movement and stuff from the Celtics. And then one thing they did well, too, is knowing that Miami was going to switch so much, they tried to get some of those switches on Bam. and they wouldn't even attack him one-on-one. They just kind of take that offensive player and push him to the other side of the floor because now Bam's away from the rim. And now what? I have to score on Jimmy Butler, Jay Crowder, Duncan Robinson, Andre Iguodala at the rim. I'm not really scared. That's an area where, Miami doesn't necessarily play the biggest guys, and it can come back to kind of bite you if Bam gets pulled away like that. So I think Spoelstra is going to look at some different things in terms of trying to keep Bam by the rim and also seeing how Bam plays next game because he just didn't have the same type of energy level that we saw in the first 4 games of the series.
I would say the wrist injury has to have an effect on it. We saw how much pain he was in the end last game. Definitely not
missed 100%. A few layups.
100%. He's not right. I think that was pretty clear. And you mentioned Spoelstra. Do need to give a shout out to Brad Stevens because this was a great adjustment game by Brad Stevens. Although, the Celtics definitely lacked energy in that first half. As you mentioned, Jason Tatum didn't look right. Whatever was said in the locker room in the second half, whatever came out with that third quarter run by that Celtics team, credit to Stevens as well for getting this team to bounce back. Down 3-1, we see teams roll over plenty of times.
Yeah, and that kind of was almost a vibe in the first half a little bit. They seemed kind of nervous. They were pressing. But, whatever Brad Stevens said, I almost feel like it was maybe even more player-driven because I think they mentioned on the broadcast like half of it was Stevens and the other half he allowed the players. Like I could see Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, like this being their team, even Kemba Walker stepping up and saying like, hey, if we're going to go out, at least let's go out strong. But what are you thinking about Game 6?
I'm rolling with the Celtics, actually. I'm gonna say they force a Game 7. I'm not ready to say who wins in the Game 7, but I think we're back on track for a 7-game series in this series. I just think even though Tatum has had 2 bad first halves in a row, I don't see a third one, and especially with how he's exploded in both of these second halves, it just feels like there's a complete game on the horizon. And with how Jaylen Brown played again tonight, I don't see how we see in Game 6 him take a step back. I feel like both of those guys are going to remain aggressive. And then the biggest question mark is, can Miami hit their threes? And if Miami's hitting their jump shots, then it's going to be a tightly contested game. But again, the Celtics, we've said from the beginning, they have more star power in this series. But this Miami Heat have just been a better team throughout these playoffs.
What Miami really needs to prevent is Boston from having one of these crazy quarters where they win by 16 points like they did in the third. Yeah. Boston just hasn't been able to put together that full 48 minutes of greatness. You know what I mean? It's like that one quarter, it's that one stretch. If you can hold them off and kind of slow things down during that period and keep it within reach, that's what Miami needs to do. Because like you said, Boston has that elite scoring talent. You don't want to get this into any type of like shootout or anything like that because you lack that, So right. I think Miami, if I'm going into Game 6, I really want to slow things down, try to make like them earn their buckets, try to get myself some transition buckets, some easy plays out there. It felt like Boston was able to get more transition buckets, especially in that second half in comparison to Miami. It's really tough. I guess I'll just stay true to my pick and I'll go with Boston here because I feel like if they win Game 6, I think they're going to win the series. Like just the type of momentum they have and going into it. And like, if they're clicking, that means that they're understanding what they need to do and they're on paper the better team. So that would mean that, going to a Game 7, they're probably going to have the edge. But I wouldn't rule Miami out in Game 6. Like I think this is kind of a toss up. But I think obviously whoever wins this game probably is going to win the series because it's going to give Boston so much momentum, especially for young guys. And then on the Miami side, the offense is scary. And at one point we kind of anticipated it would cool off, and it feels like it's that point.
Yeah. And, I think now, seeing at how the Miami Heat have played up until this point, this now becomes very important to Jimmy Butler or for Jimmy Butler, how he responds these next either 1 or 2 games that we have left in this series. Because we have been hyping Jimmy Butler up as being the man. Now it's time to be the man. There isn't anyone else on this team that can lead this team to the NBA Finals. You need a star to do that. Whether or not your team is very good or not, one guy's got to become the alpha and lead the way. And, all eyes are on Jimmy Butler, especially in this Game 6. Like you said, I agree. If Miami loses Game 6, I have a hard time thinking of Game 7. As we know Game 7s get, they're going to be tough, nitty-gritty. You trust the team that's got 3 different guys who can score in isolation without the help of others.
Yeah, and even maybe throwing forward Gordon Hayward. Like he's a guy that can create his offensive. You give him a Duncan Robinson. You know what I mean?
This is a big Game 6 for Miami. Like you said, I think this Game 6 decides who wins the series.
And Butler hasn't scored more than 24 points in the series. So that's a little concerning. Obviously, against Milwaukee, he had a 30-point game and a 40-point game. Against the Pacers, he had a 27 and a 28, but he also had a 6-point game against them. So that they need that consistent scoring from Jimmy Butler. Maybe it's one of those random nights where he hits a couple threes or something like that, but they can't have him be lackadaisical. They need him to give them consistent points in every quarter. Be it 6 points, be it 8 points, whatever it is. They need to rely on him, and maybe even turn up the minutes. 36 minutes. This is going to be not a must win because obviously they do have Game 7, but I would play him 40, 42 at least.
I'll tell you this: no Solomon Hill. Those minutes are done now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't a terrible 7 minutes, but now you need to allocate those minutes to the higher rotational players.
Yeah.
And I could even use slightly less Iggy because Iggy wasn't that good tonight either. I think Iggy had from my standards, a bad game.
If he's not having a high level of defensive impact, it's hard to keep him on the floor because he's not giving you much offensively, and it feels like he's at his best in the zone because that's when he can use his basketball IQ and his hands the most. I didn't even actually mind Kelly Olynyk because he can give them a little bit of offense because he's such a weird matchup given his three-point shooting and weird ability to drive at his size. It's not like anything nice to watch, but it's something.
100%. I mean, he gives some size, and again, he's facing a front court that doesn't have that many big players to begin with. And you don't hate a matchup of Olynyk and
Kanter.
Kanter, yeah.
Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think that's the matchup where if Kanter's out there, you're like, okay, we can give Olynyk a little bit, even Grant Williams, whatever. You don't feel too bad about that. But all right, Kory, we'll catch you on the next one for Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals. And we'll be back to this one on Sunday for Game 6. As always, you can catch us on all streaming platforms.
Peace out, knuckleheads.